Good afternoon, everyone. And now for something completely different. I'm here to tell you what we are doing at United Nations World Food Programme, mobilizing blockchain and crypto asset use cases to drive social impact. And this is the reason why. The challenge of global hunger. Unfortunately, in a world that produces enough food to feed everyone, we still have 828 million people going to bed hungry every single day. That's 1 in 10 people worldwide. And that's very much what we're trying to tackle at the World Food Programme. In fact, I'm afraid to tell you that we are suffering the worst humanitarian crisis since World War II, where 345 million people, that's 250% more than before the COVID pandemic, are suffering acute food insecurity. That means that actually many of them can actually die if we don't help them on a systematic basis. And this is very much driven by what we call the 4 Cs: conflict, climate change, the COVID pandemic, and rising costs. 60% of these 345 million people live in areas affected by war or local violence. Many of them are suffering in areas that are affected by climate change that leads to droughts and other events that affects agricultural yields and livelihoods, so people cannot feed themselves anymore. We all know the impact of COVID and the restrictions that it brought, but also the economic impact that it led to in many parts of the world. And rising costs driven by inflation of fuel and food costs are basically affecting all of us, but especially more so the people that live in very vulnerable locations in this world. And that's why we at WFP are very much focusing on saving lives of those people that are in the most vulnerable circumstances, but at the same time helping to bring sustainable development and build resilience in those communities so that they can better resist the next economic or climate-driven shock. We are very humbled to have been nominated the 2020 Nobel Peace Prize laureate that really confirmed the connection between peace and zero hunger agenda, also because of the elements that I just mentioned. And that's why we work for every single day. Let me give you a very concrete example, which is our response to the Ukraine conflict. I'm sure you're very familiar with the situation. Within days, we were on the ground delivering food assistance and other type of first need basis. And later on, we started to implement our cash assistance program as well. We are supporting more than 7 million people to date, and we need a total of 2 billion to do that until the end of the year. That's also why we're very thankful to the contribution that we got from Dunamu of $800,000 that were allocated to cash assistance to the people buying their own foods or to promote the local economy. And this is what we do at a glance. We are trying to help 150 million people on a daily basis. 40% of that through cash assistance programs. Not only we deliver food, increasingly we give them the means to buy the things that they like or the things that they need the most. And we do that in 120 countries and territories throughout the world. And just think of it in terms of the scale. We are probably one of the largest supply chain organizations out there with 100 planes, 30 ships, 5,600 trucks, delivering food to the most remote areas very often on a daily basis. But we do that also thanks to a great network of worldwide partners of more than 1,000 NGOs and other entities that we work with. I come from the Innovation Accelerator. That is our innovation arm, if you will, where we are constantly looking to source, support, and scale high-impact innovations oriented towards disrupting hunger. We have looked at more than 8,500 applications, and that can be on blockchain, AI, but they can also be very frugal, trying to understand how can we leverage local food processes to feed the communities that are very familiarized and appreciative of those food products. We do this thanks to the support of our multi-year partners across the globe, USAID, the German government, different governments throughout the world, but also increasingly private sector donors as well. And this is in a nutshell what we're trying to do next, is how do we help by reaching out to the best innovation ecosystems, help to support the needs of the next 100 million people by 2025? How can we bring them into an inclusive digital economy that actually safeguards their interests, not as beneficiaries and recipients of aid, but as active contributors to their own future and success? We have different acceleration programs where we borrow practices from the private sector in agile, lean startup, and other best practices to really accelerate internal and external teams in their development to scale. We work a lot with third parties as well, like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the World Health Organization, GIZ in Germany, and so forth, so that we amplify our reach beyond food and the zero hunger agenda, trying to tackle the other sustainable development goals and the UN. And we're trying to build a global platform working with different organizations in creating, let's say, outposts in the US, in Middle East, and also looking into Asia as well. But let me tell you more specifically about what we are doing in the blockchain space. That's why I'm here, after all. And the main reason is because many years back, we started a project called Building Blocks. And some of you might remember my colleague, Human Haddad, was here 3 years ago talking about that same project. Well, I'm happy to say that now that same project is assisting over 1 million Syrian and Rohingya refugees in Jordan and Bangladesh. It's also being used in the Ukrainian context, you just saw me present that, to coordinate all the cash assistance, basically of 95% plus humanitarian agencies on the ground. And that is basically allowing us to track and trace all the cash transfers to the beneficiaries. In fact, we have already processed over $400 million in that assistance in these three locations. And we do that based on a neutral blockchain network that is specifically designed for that. But it didn't happen overnight. It was a long journey. And it's very much illustrative of what we have been doing in this space from day one. So the project actually started in 2017 in Pakistan. We had a pilot with 100 participants. And there we developed the first concept and put it into practice. We were able to bring them to Jordan in 2017. We were able to scale it a little bit towards the first 1,000 participants. We then secured all the internal support that we needed because it was seen also as a potential risky technology back in 2017-18. But what I'm happy to say today is that we are scaling it to new agencies, to new countries, and we hope that this can be adopted more widely across the UN and the humanitarian system at large. What else can we think about in terms of scaling blockchain and crypto at WFP? And that's why we have commissioned a very in-depth study to say what are the relevant trends that we see out there that could be applicable to us. And we are definitely very interested in the crypto philanthropy work. We are, by design, purely voluntarily funded, so donations. We cannot accept any other form. We are a non-for-profit organization, after all. But we also see the benefit in terms of potential decentralized financial inclusion business cases. One thing that is very important for us is that we really create the evidence and the learnings out of these pilots that I'm just mentioning. Monitoring and evaluation for us is paramount across everything we do because we owe it to the people that trust us, that collaborate with us, but especially to the beneficiaries and the people we serve themselves, that we really do the best we can to do no harm and actually do a lot of good. And that's why we have collaborated with CCIF, the Cambridge Center for Alternative Finance, or we're working with the University of California, Berkeley, the Lab for Inclusive FinTech, that they help in assess exactly the intended and potentially unintended consequences of these pilots so that we can scale the right parameters and address the potential faulty ones. And the question is, how could you potentially get involved? I'm looking at a room full of developers, very capable people, great organizations, And there are things that we very much benefit from at WFP, which is how can you become a catalytic support of our innovation, but especially helping to develop real-world use cases for the humanitarian sector for the people that are in the most vulnerable circumstances. So that's why we are very much looking forward to contributions in fiat or crypto that can help us accelerate our thought leadership and reach 100 million people by 2025. You can also discuss how you can be involved in the exploration and the development of these real use cases, working side by side with our teams and trying to co-create the future we want to be inclusive for everyone. And of course, when appropriate, engage your organizational leaders to jointly explore these use cases together with us, but many others in the humanitarian sector that are looking at the same opportunity. So with that, I just want to say thank you very much, and please help us disrupting hunger. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that inspirational speech, and I believe that we do have a couple of questions from the audience for you, how to get involved is in particular. So now I'd like to translate some of the questions for you. The first question is about now, you also mentioned during your speech that there were a couple of cases in which Dunamu had a case of providing humanitarian aid towards Ukraine for World Food Aid, emergency aid to the people in Ukraine. But for blockchain companies and other companies in the industry, in order for them to expand their activities for humanitarian aid, what kind of activities should humanitarian aid organizations like the WFP provide, or what kind of planning should they be doing in the meantime?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. It's a great question. Organizations like ours, but other agencies, UNICEF, UNHCR, which is catering for refugees, are constantly looking for establishing collaborations with the leaders of the respective industries, and very much so with the private sector as well. There are a lot of complementary capabilities that the private sector has, in this case, the blockchain, the crypto community, that we don't. And it's not our intention to build them. We want to be complementary partners. So what we are very much looking forward is always two things. Financial contribution, because that's the basis of how we provide assistance to the people we serve, and we are very thankful for the generous contribution of Dunamu that served part of our cause in the Ukraine and resulted in cash assistance to people that were displaced in the country or that they were even refugees in neighboring countries. And we do that with many partners around the world. But we're also increasingly looking for technical collaborations where we also think about how we can co-develop these use cases that can promote the financial inclusion of the people that we're trying to serve so that they can help themselves and in a way graduate out of aid into helping themselves in providing for their communities, their families, and of course themselves. So hopefully I'm happy to have a few discussions on how we could potentially establish some of those collaborations.
Thank you for that idea. And now, secondly, it's in English, but so it was so impressive that WFP is using blockchain technology for operations. So besides reducing transaction fees, how does blockchain help WFP?
It's a great question. I'll go to the extent of my technical knowledge, but speed, transparency, and cost savings, right? Those are the three main benefits of blockchain. Transparency is very important so that we can actually demonstrate where each cent goes, right? And therefore, everything is fully recorded in the blockchain. But it's also allowing us to do a lot of coordination and reconciliation. A lot of the effort is always going into where did the entire money go? Was it distributed? Was it allocated correctly? Was then the use of it as intended? By doing the blockchain, we have it much easier because then we can just apply all the data analytics to it in an anonymized way because we don't trace private activities of the people receiving it, but allows us to consolidate and reconcile the data very much. But speed, transparency, and cost savings on the transaction fees are definitely the main benefits. We're now starting to explore could add in crypto modalities on top of it, take us above and beyond, because it would enable the people themselves to start experimenting with some of the potential DeFi benefits as well.
Thank you for that answer. Next question. So for technology to create a better world, I mean, I believe that technology has the impact as well as the potential to create a better world. So for UN, other international agencies or NGOs, do they employ a lot of developers or engineers? Because I believe that technology has that potential to create a better world. And for technology to address societal issues, do you have anything that you ask of future developers?
Thank you very much for that question. The answer is yes. I strongly believe that science, technology, and innovation do have the power to make this a better world. In my team, I not only have the innovative finance, but I have what we call the frontier innovations. I have AI specialists, I have blockchain specialists. They are really there doing the coding next to our partners. The UN system, and definitely we at the WFP at large, have a lot of technical profiles and opportunities for people that want to work with us in that domain as well. So I would encourage you to look at our careers portal. There are always opportunities both in the head office or in field locations. And again, we are in sometimes the most difficult places on earth. So the answer is yes, and you're most welcome to join us if you want to help us in our noble mission.
Well, thank you very much for that answer. I believe that that is all of the questions that we have for today. 네, 여기까지 저희가 시간 관계상 질문을 드리도록 하겠습니다. Thank you very much, and please give another big round of applause for our great presentation. Thank you.